Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. Hi, y'all. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Well, hi, sister, and I am so excited to have Dr. Michelle Perro with us today. I have been spouting this stuff for years, and this woman actually has evidence. So I am thrilled to hear your experience and your wisdom and, man, your solutions. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joanna and Crystal. I love what you're doing here. I love Soil Sisters. I love your focus, your intentions. So this should be a great conversation for your listeners.
Yes, it will be. We're so excited to have Dr. Michelle Perro. She is an MD and has a diploma in homeopathy. She is a seasoned clinician with over 40 years of experience in pediatrics and integrative medicine, dedicated to treating children and families. A Yale graduate, she trained at Mount Sinai Medical School, Bellevue Hospital, and NYU, later serving as director of a pediatric emergency department in NYC and spending over a decade at UCSF Benioff Oakland Children's Hospital. For the past 25 years, Dr. Perro has championed integrative approaches to health, focusing on the impact of genetically modified foods and pesticides on children's well-being. She has lectured globally and co-authored the acclaimed book, What's Making Our Children Sick? Dr. Perro is CEO and co-founder of GMOscience.org, promoting food as medicine and regenerative health education. She also hosts the podcast, The New MDs, and offers parenting resources through her website. Her upcoming book, Making Our Children Well, is set for release this year. So, Dr. Perro, thank you so much. We are excited to dig in with you.
Yeah, thank you, Joanna, for that intro. As you're reading that, I thought, gosh, I've been around a long time. And please call me Michelle or Dr. Dog, as my patients like to call me, but Michelle is fine.
Okay. Well, I love that you have a book already, What's Making Our Children Sick, and now the solution book is on its way out. So I really want to dive in today and explore the links between genetically modified food, glyphosate, our gut health, human health, because we live in a pills over prevention culture, and frankly, the convenience is killing us.
Joanna, I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly what I try to educate on. The tagline for my website is Educate to Regenerate, because what we do is take a situation which you describe, which you're ready to go, oh my God, what do I do? To a solutions forward way of approaching this, getting out of the negative mindset into the positive on how we reclaim, and I like to say regain the terrain.
I like that.
I like that
so there is a dramatic rise in chronic pediatric disorders. Like, that's indisputable. So I would love for you to describe what that landscape is, to give us a jumping off point into the urgency of this conversation.
Certainly. And I'm known for being completely transparent, honest, and not holding back any information. Sort of what I used to tell moms in the practices, mostly moms, boo-hoo, let's cry, get the tissues. And then ignite our righteous anger, ignite the mama bear, and let's make this better. We're going to clean house, move over, whoever's made the mess, and ladies are in, and we're taking charge. That's what I say. And gentlemen also, but that's sort of my pitch. The landscape, our children have been under a toxic assault now for decades. This is not new. But it's come to a sharp peak because the degree of chronic disease is so profound. When I wrote the book that you talked about, that was in 2017, I got my data based on a 2012 study. The percentage of children with a chronic disease at that time was 54%. We'll do a few numbers just so people in the audience know that we are legit and they want to hear physicians spout stats. We'll just do a few stats and then practicality. But since that time, I think we're closer to 75%. And as one little girl in the practice told me once with severe allergies, she said, but Dr. Perro, everybody has allergies. And she's right, because we are now seeing children with global immune dysfunction or immune incompetence. And that is based on the disruption of the gut, brain, and I add microbiome, and I also add immune access. That whole structure in our children's body has been disrupted by the introduction of GMOs, 1996, pesticides. So that's really since the 50s, but it's been amped up with GMO introduction, and we can get into that. Not to mention toxic metals and all the other contaminants. It's a toxic soup. And even when we signal out toxic metals, pesticides, electromagnetic frequencies, there is almost essentially zero data where we've looked at cumulative toxicity. What happens when you pair toxic metals and pesticides? And that's called negative synergism, meaning toxicity is increased when the burden is encumbered higher and higher. And we know that's true particularly for chronic neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, which is now affecting 1 in 12.5 boys here in my state of California. And it goes state by state, but the numbers are stunningly staggering on what we are witnessing now in terms of just our children's health, whether it's autoimmunity, sleep disruption, behavioral disorders, which are also gut disorders, allergic phenomena, asthma, allergies, eczema, that whole group they're called atopic diseases. And it's profound. And just basic gut disorders, constipation, reflux, tummy aches. The number one complaint of children of pain disorders are tummy aches. In adults, it's back pain. So this lays out the palette of the landscape of what our children are dealing with, secondary to a chronic assault from environmental toxicants. It's no simpler than that.
So we know that this is coming from the food that kids eat. I know one of the studies that Crystal and I had looked at was that 70 or 75% of a child's diet is processed foods these days.
Indeed. So what American children are being fed is industrial food-like products. It's not real food. And it's a creation from laboratory science, synthetic food. They've taken beautiful whole foods and processed it away with toxic materials like high fructose corn syrup, genetically modified organisms, a variety of pesticides. The average food has at least 6 pesticides, and produce something that can live on your shelf for 2 years. This is also what our kids are eating in school. 30 million school lunches served a day, and they're a toxic tray of nastiness. So our kids are eating this. These foods are not only toxic, they're nutrient poor. So our kids are overfed and undernourished. They don't have the nutrients to run their biologic systems. And that's coupled with the fact that mainstream medicine, where most people have their insurance to go to these health providers, are not trained in nutritional medicine. So they have no idea how to manage magnesium, zinc deficiencies, the most basic nutrient deficiencies. They don't even know how to test for them. They even run the wrong test, because not that I'm throwing my fellow pediatricians under the bus, they weren't trained in this. We've been trained to be pharmacologists, not nutritional people. 2 hours of nutrition, a year of pharmacology medical school. You can see the emphasis. So then folks like me, I was traditionally trained how to veer out and get additional training. I went to the homeopathic education when my kids were little online. Working, momming, soccer mom, room mom, school at night. But I knew that's what I had to do because my palate was too small. And I had to increase what I knew in order to provide the care for the children that I was seeing. The care I learned was inadequate and actually was making them sick.
So when you did do that, was the solution obvious to you that it's the food? I don't need to give these kids pills. We need to change what these children are consuming.
What I had learned very early, is the early 2000s, when I saw the uptick in so many sick kids, was that if children were relatively well, when I just changed their diet from a GMO-laden conventional diet to a whole foods organic, I say organic regenerative now, I was saying organic then, diet, they significantly got better. The whole family got better. And I'll tell you a quick anecdote about that. When children already had evidence of chronic disease, let's say autoimmunity, profound behavioral issues, it wasn't enough. I had to add homeopathy, nutraceuticals, nutritional medicine, herbal medicine, even occasionally pharmaceuticals, my last choice. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, my favorite metaphor, but I use what I have to use to get a kid back on track, and almost all natural, energetic, hands-on methodologies first. So I saw that. And then, when I was writing the book, and my co-author is a medical anthropologist from University of California, San Francisco, and she didn't believe, and she'll tell the story, I'm not sharing something she wouldn't be proud of. At the beginning, she didn't believe anything I had to say, nothing. And we would walk and record and write the book together. And she'd say, okay, you're saying this, but Harvard, Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins disagrees with you. And you're right. And they're all wrong. And I said, yes, that's correct. So she came with me to my clinic. And I think a year of seeing patients with me. She's a hardcore researcher, tough little gal. She was badass. She gave me such a migraine, but she really was badass. And she sat with me with patients for a year. The final family that did her in were autistic twins. And when she sat with me in that small room with that mom and those twins spinning around my room, and then a month later, how much better they were, and I started to change her diet. And I did other things too. I took out gluten and dairy and corn, and I was making other changes. But going organic was number one. She was shocked. They were like 25% better. And I have to share one anecdote. It's my favorite story in the whole world. During this time when I was seeing patients, seeing a family from Modesto, which is a growing area of California, nice couple. Dad was a trucker. Mom worked in an office. And both kids had autism, both children. But the older boy was more severe. And they drove 3 hours to come see me, 2.5 hours. And I changed diets. Kids got better. The dad was not my patient. All this dad did was bring organic food with him on his trucking long distance routes because the family just changed the food for everyone. He had chronic renal failure. He was on the dialysis list for a new kidney. His mom and his brother both were already on dialysis. And he came back 8 or 9 months later, showed me his lab tests, and he had regained 80% of his kidney function. Yes. He went to his UCSF doctor, who's 12 years of chronic renal disease, kidney failure, said, oh, we must have misdiagnosed you. When he told her that all he did was change his diet to organic, she could not believe that pesticides and GMOs are not benign, took out his kidneys. So this is just one of many stories that I have had. That's my favorite because it was so dramatic over the years of significant health improvements.
So what should we dive in first? Should we talk about the GMOs first or the glyphosate first?
I think we should get into the GMOs because, they've been around since 96. Everyone is eating them unaware. They're not labeled because our government told us we don't need to know what we're eating. 2016, the DARK Act, Deny Americans the Right to Know. We fought to label those. And that's why GMO Science, my thing, was born, because we were trying to label GMOs in 2014 here in California. We lost because of lots of money. So people are in the assumption because we're commonly eating them that they're benign. Well, I can tell you they're not. Because I'll just briefly study, the first study on GMOs was done by Dr. Arpad Pusti, an Hungarian researcher at the Rowett Institute in, I think it's in Scotland is where it's actually at, in the UK. And he was asked to look at GMOs, and he was a meticulous researcher. He studied plant lectins. That's like what's in potatoes, right? Plants' natural barriers and defenses. And he thought GMO potatoes, which he designed, and he designed a rat study, would be just fine. He didn't anticipate a problem. When he fed those rats GMOs, now he didn't give them the pesticides, just GMOs, because we don't need a GMO now without its associated pesticide, herbicide, which is Roundup Ready, glyphosate based. And we can talk about what that means. Is there was significant immunologic, reproductive, organ damage, gut damage, etc. in these rats. He was shocked. He came out on the BBC, published his data, and 2 days later, his lab was shut down. All his materials were taken away because Bill, here in the US, called Tony in the UK, called his institute, and he was locked down. He went on to have a heart attack. This is not a HIPAA violation. He tells his story in a movie in 2006 called Scientist Under Attack. He tells his whole story. And basically anybody, any scientist, any physician who has the gall to go against the genetically modified organism is safe and effective narrative gets their career taken down at extreme financial loss. So, but he didn't stop. So after that, I can tell you there may be 3 human studies on GMOs, barely 3 GMOs. And the main study that Monsanto now bear that was performed using 3 months of juvenile rats eating GMOs. And the rat that died, they took out of the study. That's the only study. And then they said GMOs were safe. There were some clinical findings, but the clinical findings were not significant, is how they justify their findings. And they've done this before. They say, oh yeah, there are some things we found, but they're not relevant. They did that with the Impossible Burger also, the nasty little GMO burger. So we've been eating this stuff based on really no clinical data. There's been a few studies since, mostly by Dr. Michael Antoniou, who's the head of genetics at King's College in the UK. And he has shown also using a very cutting edge technique, it's called metabolomics, doesn't matter, but it's super cutting edge science, showing that GMOs cause oxidative stress, like a rusting process. They reduce glutathione. Glutathione is the master antioxidant in your body. And the microbes, what we now know, they're promiscuous little bacteria, are having sex with our own microbes, and they're swapping genetic material through something called plasmids. So what's happened now is our little promiscuous bacteria are now genetically modified. And in theory, we are owned by Monsanto Bayer because we are now genetically modified as well. I would defy any American to think they have not eaten a GMO. It's really hard to be fully organic because there's a lot of contamination of crops, organic fields, side by side with a conventional field. Foods are not labeled. They're inadvertently in our food. And this one Berkeley researcher, Dr. Ignacio Chapela, in Dr. Arpad's movie, Scientists Under Attack, showed how corn went 1,000 miles and contaminated Mexican heirloom corn, GMO corn, 1,000 miles via wind, birds, etc. This stuff gets around. Once released, it cannot be contained. And there's an incredible arrogance and lack of regulatory bodies and essentially no data on the long-term health sequelae, no look at the microbiome. And you know the microbiome is responsible for vitamin production, immune production, and it also produces the neurotransmitters, the chemicals that run your brain function. All comes from our microbiome. Now we're mucking around with the microbiome via these untested, unsafe, imprecise, and unstable mechanisms of genetic modification, also known as genetic engineering. So this myth that it's okay is exactly that, and it must be dispelled, and every eater must be aware.
Well, I had written down a question like, why should consumers care about genetically engineered food crops? But if you didn't just pick that up from what she just put down, you have more trouble than just the food
we
tree.
Can talk about in this podcast.
I just couldn't be, harder or clearer enough that if people don't get away from the convenience, the cost is profound. I understand that, you're busy, 3 kids, you want to go through that drive-through. 46% of the American income is spent on eating out. And if you're eating out, I can tell you what you're eating. You're not eating whole, organic, fresh foods. You're eating ultra-processed, GMO-laden, toxic food-like materials that you're feeding your child. And then you want to know why they can't focus in school, while they have tummy aches, while they've gained weight and their body shape has changed. It's what they're being fed. And parents tell me all the time they don't know how to cook. And as my own kid told me, Mom, YouTube it. Oh, right. I learned to ferment and make sauerkraut on YouTube. My own kid told me to do it years ago. And I went, oh my God, so easy. Are you kidding? I was like, so it just takes that next step. And parents sure know how to get on the internet. Everyone's got an iPhone in their hand. Mm-hmm. So every 18-month-old has an iPhone in their hand. So people know how to get this information, look stuff up. If we didn't learn how to cook, I get it. I didn't learn how to cook as a kid. I missed that boat. Even my parents didn't teach me. It was our grandparents often who knew how to do these things. And I'm trying to re-educate people about how we bring back these skills that we've lost. And they're not gone. We just have to resurrect them.
I love that, because I did learn to cook from my grandparents, and I still do. I cook like my granny, and that is a healthier version, but very much like my grandmother. And I feel very fortunate that we grew up being fed a lot of homegrown food, and our family owned a ranch, and so we had beef. Yeah, we had good food. I mean, then, we got into our teen years, and then fast food and all the processed stuff started happening. But, you've got the numbers and the research and the evidence of, and I'm just like, I knew that. I knew it. And my dad is like, you can't feed the world on organic food. And I'm like, yes, you can. Mm. And we have to. Like, this is not even an option anymore. And yet here we are. And it's so frustrating because, we're cheering, and I did as well, our Texas government for saying we need to label the poisons by 2027. But I'm just like, that's not enough. Like, we need to stop poisoning everything.
And to your point, Crystal, and thank you for sharing that, there's two things that come to mind. That the addictions to fast food are created because the companies put something called palatants or palatants in the food, a mixture of fat, salt, and sugar to create addictions. That's why, do you remember that old Lay's potato chip ad? I bet you just can't eat one. Well, that's true. And I had a cousin who was a neuroscientist who worked in academics, couldn't feed his 3 boys. He went into private industry, and he designed studies to figure out what things to put in foods to get people to eat them. I mean, my cousin told me this. I nearly fell out of a chair. I had no idea what he was doing. He has since passed with Alzheimer's. No comment. Yeah. So anyway, So our food is being engineered to create food addictions. So when I help people get off fast food, it's getting them off an addiction. Yes. And there are people who go through withdrawal. And I am not saying it's easy. And you need something to replace it. So you need the skills and the cooking skills to know what to eat rather than driving through Taco Bell or wherever people are going. So you just can't take it away. What are we going to give them instead? Now, it takes about 2 weeks to clear some of these addictions. So people have to be strong. When you do it in a family, it's better. And I didn't say just mom in the kitchen. Everyone needs to get in the kitchen and teaching the kids how to cook. Boys love knives. Well, everyone loves knives. Get them chopping. They have the kid-safe knives. Don't cut their fingers off. And so this is what we need to do. So that was one point, to your point. And then there was something else came up, but I'll think about it in a minute. But I just wanted to share this thing about how industry has hijacked our taste buds.
Well, and in harmony with that, the fast food is often the treat. So the kid has done something well, they maybe got all A's on their report card. And so the treat is to go to McDonald's. And I'm just like, we have to change the relationship and the perception of what this is.
Absolutely, Joanna. It's a cultural phenomenon. And often we gals are responsible for that. Because at every soccer game my kids played at, they were getting these little nasty cupcakes from the local, it was a Safeway supermarket with dyes and high fructose corn syrup. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Bring fruit, fresh fruit to the soccer games. And that's often the moms. That's us having to change what we do. It's quicker and faster to drive through and pick up some of those nasty little cupcakes versus just getting a bag of organic tangerines. I mean, it will just change the mindset. You want to congratulate your child for doing well, and you want to honor that. Trip to the park, special thing with library, special time with mom or dad. They get out of cleaning their room a week. They get a pass. There are so many things what we can do to create children who are motivated. I have no problem with carrots for children. I don't have a problem with the bribery. I bribe my own kids. Sometimes you need a bribe, but to get my kids to go hiking when they were little, we'd give them M&Ms. I know, full disclosure right here. That was, 25, 30 years ago. Now, no. I did like those M&Ms. I'm going to be honest. Yeah. And I thought, okay, no more M&Ms. But oh my God, there's so many other things I've learned to eat and make since 25 years ago when I was in that mindset too. I was that mom too. I thought Go-Gurts and waffles, Eggo waffles were healthy. And now I can tell you so I was one of those parents. And so it's a journey. And I ask for people to join the marathon, not to sprint, to get back on this track, because we've all been sidelined. We've all been hoodwinked, every one of us. If you're an American, you've been hoodwinked. And now we have to kind of regain our way back. That's all.
Yeah. I remember thinking when in my 20s at some point that the need for convenience was going to kill us. Like I felt myself being impatient about something that just previously hadn't been available to me. And I didn't even know it was there. And so now I'm frustrated because I can't have it. And I just in that moment had this really like, wow, this need for convenience is not good. And here we are 30 years later, and it literally is killing us. Because that's what they're breaking it all down. Oh, don't worry. You don't worry about cooking that food. We are going to cook it for you. And here we'll have it all together in this plastic container that's dripping poisons into the heated food. You take that home. And so, yeah,
and then even the containers that they're in, they put really hot food in like styrofoam or plastic. And sometimes you'd get it home and the styrofoam's kind of melted underneath the hot food, and then that's just compounding the poison.
It's interesting because when you get those little black takeout, those are PFAS, and PFAS is the forever chemical. But in certain countries, like in India, they have a whole system where they have people who go to all the houses, and it's often the wives, preparing lunches, and they put them in these metal stacked tins and then bring them to all the locations of where the dads, this is still pretty traditional, are working. And it could be the other way around. So there's this constant people carrying massive numbers of these metal containers to the workplaces from homes as a job. That's their job. And I thought, takeout. And so we can even rethink takeout. Imagine if you just gave them your metal container and said, put my hot food in here. And they sell them, those, steel containers. We have to rethink it all. Even those coffee cups that you take in, please bring in your steel or glass cup or whatever. Those coffee cups have all kinds of liners inside them that are toxic. Your drive-through coffee. I said, that's not okay. I had one mom, one of my favorite moms, in the office tell me she couldn't afford to go organic because it was a white elitist hippy-dippy thing, and she wasn't going to do it. And she was sitting there with a Starbucks coffee in her hand. And here in California, back then it was about $4 or $5. So that's $4 or $5 right there. And her beautiful manicure with her phony nails, that had to be $45. So $50 of waste, because those phony nails will have phthalates on them. They're all toxic. And so I thought, well, let's rethink our priorities, shall we? That $50, you can buy a ton of organic beans and organic rice and some organic free-range meat. And you can probably feed your family for the week on that.
Well, and the other piece of that too, that someone had pointed out to me before is, the bag of chips. If we're looking at the weight, the actual weight of the food and the price per pound, it's more expensive to buy the crap than it is to buy raw whole foods and meats.
100%. I think one of the worst offenders are boxed cereals. Those cereals, if you look now in the supermarket, they run about $8 a box of pure garbage. And when you look at the ingredient list, it's like a who's who of chemicals. And I thought, what the heck? And then they add synthetic vitamins because they're enriched, right? And even when they add folic acid, it's not even the right folate that they put in there to enrich with the B vitamins. So it's just a disaster. So I said, if you could just come off the cereal, you're going to save $8 a week right there. If you've got 3 kids, maybe, and you're giving them all cereal every day, maybe that one box of cereal is going to last you a week. That's $8 a week. We're talking $48 a month on box cereal. That's a lot of organic oats you can buy for $48.
So speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about glyphosate now and how glyphosates work and what the effects are on humans, because, the typical oats that someone would buy or the cereal, all of that corn, all of that, from what we know from farmers, is that to get organic seed to plant is darn near impossible because all these seeds now are Roundup ready seeds. So let's talk about how the glyphosate works in the body and how it affects humans and children.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing to realize is that the only reason why we're eating GMOs is so that they created a seed, a genetically modified seed they call Roundup Ready, Roundup made by Monsanto, which is the main ingredient is glyphosate, but not even the most active part of that, because the inerts may be as toxic as the glyphosate, but I saved that conversation. So we're eating GMOs, so our food could be sprayed with Roundup. It doesn't save the world. It uses more water. The plants are less nutrient dense. It kills off the soil. So there's no benefit to eating a GMO. Zero benefit. As a matter of fact, the seeds require a lot of inputs to get those seeds to take up. And that was from a USDA farmer, a biologist, who has since passed away, Robert Kramer, where I learned that. And thank you, Dr. Kramer. So glyphosate was introduced in this, it's been around since 1950. It was introduced in the 70s, and then again in 1996, when it was when the plants were modified to sustain the spraying of glyphosate. Glyphosate is a synthetic amino acid. An amino acid are the building blocks of proteins, and it looks a lot like glycine. Glycine is a very common amino acid we can make in our body that we use in our collagen, which is our musculoskeletal structure, as well as glutathione, the antioxidant I referred to earlier. And we know now that glycine and glyphosate, which is N-phosphonylmethylglycine, swap. So children are feeling rather doughy these days, and they're tired. And I suspect that even glyphosate may be making up their musculoskeletal structure. But I digress. So why is glyphosate such a problem? Well, they have to spray more now because approximately, and it may be even higher, 75% of the weeds now in the U.S. are resistant to glyphosate. So they've had to spray more toxic herbicides and create more stacked genetic traits to tolerate more toxic herbicides like dicamba, which is awful. A 2,4-D. But okay, so we now have an herb-resistant problem to glyphosate. So farmers need to spray more. Glyphosate was patented by Monsanto in 2003 and 2010, now Bayer, as an antibiotic, and a very effective antibiotic. And it kills just about everything. And what we know from studies in the veterinarian literature from 2013 is that it propagates pathogens like Clostridia and Salmonella and depletes your beneficial microbes like Lactobacilli and Bifidobacteria. Babies need Bifido. We all need Bifido. So, number one. Number two is that it binds your essential minerals. It actually binds all minerals. So it was designed as a metal chelator to clean metal pipes in 1970s, a Stafford company. And then they found the weeds around the pipes where they were working were dying. But I'm sure there were other reasons why they developed this that we don't know about. That's the storyline. So it binds all the essential minerals, magnesium, zinc, copper, calcium, but it also binds toxic metals. So we know that aluminum, which is just about in all our food because we're getting sprayed with it, it's everywhere. Glyphosate can shuttle aluminum 6 different ways across your blood-brain barrier into your child's head. And we've known that since 1993. It's not new literature. I'm not brilliant. I didn't figure it out. It's in the literature. So that's number 2. And the other big problem, there are many, I'll just tell you the big ones, is that it's a carcinogen. So in 2015, the International Association on Research in Cancer said, looked at all the data, And they said, okay, it's a 2A carcinogen, which means it causes cancer in animals. It would have been a 1A if they show that it caused cancer in humans, but we did not have any human studies. So we just said it's a 2A carcinogen. They went after IARC like gangbusters. But we know that Secretary Kennedy, then in a law firm, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Wisham and got the other lawyers, first lawsuit, it was in California, Mr. Dwayne Johnson, a sprayer for a school district, won $287 million for his cancer caused by spraying Roundup. And there have been thousands of successful lawsuits since. What your listeners also need to know, that right now in Congress, they're trying to give pesticide companies indemnity, meaning that if you develop cancer or any other health issue from spraying pesticides, Big Ag, the company, cannot be held liable. This is similar to vaccine, the NBIC, passed in 1986 by Ronald Reagan, President Reagan at the time. So now we know that these cancer-causing pesticides, which are in our food, are causing massive immune dysregulation and ultimately cancers, most common being non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but others as well, not to mention endocrine disruption, reproductive disorders, et cetera, et cetera. And we're allowing our children to eat it every bite, every single day, all day long. And so that's why I insist parents take charge, because our regulatory agencies have been captured by an incompetent government who is in collusion with industry to protect your children ourselves. We cannot rely on the government to do what we do in the home. It has to happen in the family. And that's the way things used to be. Before there was Medicaid and Medicare, before there was welfare, families took care of families, and we took care of each other. And that's what we have to get back to, because I know with MAHA and the MAHA Commission report, they're trying. The MAHA Commission report, Make America Healthy Again, Secretary Kennedy just published. The second report a few days ago did not even mention GMOs or pesticides. Now
That's what I heard.
They bring up the other issues, but not pesticides. It's like hands off, give industry a pass, Big Ag. And I said, no, Big Ag does not get a pass, because the chronic poison is coming from many directions, but food is high on the list.
Yeah, it affects literally everyone.
Everything.
Including your dog. Dogs now have an extreme rate of cancer, and it's rising in cats too, because we give dogs the worst leftovers in the dog food. If you buy conventional dog food, you can't buy conventional dog food either. Either make it yourself or you have to get organic and cat food.
Well, and it's so bizarre. I mean, to see now, back when I had pets, I haven't had pets for over a decade, but all the pets now are allergic to everything. They have issues, itchy hot spots, all kinds of stuff. And I'm just like, dogs didn't used to be this way. Kids didn't used to be this way. There's some, kids that I go to church with, and listening to them rattle off all the things they're allergic to, I'm just like, how is this not obvious to everyone?
Yeah.
If you give a dinner party now, let's say, I was thinking about this morning, like if you have a dinner party, you have your list. I have a cat. Who's allergic to the cat? Who's allergic to gluten, dairy? Who can't have onions and sulfur foods? Who's EMF sensitive? You just have to go through a list. I mean, by the time you're done, you can't have anyone come in your house.
Yeah.
They might as well enter in a plastic bag.
Have a bubble party.
Everyone kind of walks in their little plastic bubble. They
drive around. You stand in your front yard and wave to your friends as they drive by. That happened during COVID.
Don't get out of your car. I'm thinking, this is insanity. I was at a recent fundraiser event for Free Now Foundation, and we were just telling the waitress what foods we wanted, and I was just giggling to myself. Oh, I don't do onions and garlic, and I can't. The waitress was, I thought, this is insanity. It's pure insanity. And how many people there didn't have corn or soy or gluten or dairy? And it's real, because when you test people for these food sensitivities, they show up on the analyses. But these tests are not done in mainstream medicine or conventional medicine, whatever you'd like to call it. It's in the purview of integrative practitioners, holistic practitioners, whatever you want to call my group. That's what I call myself, an integrative pediatrician. So if you suspect you have these, you have to find someone in my area, which means you're paying out of pocket. because our appointments aren't covered by insurance. So now you're paying for two systems. We're going to bankrupt families.
Yeah. Well, and then that's the way they want it, and when someone says, oh, this organic stuff, I can't afford it, it's so expensive. But I'm like, the way I see it, you're not going to be able to afford your life if you keep going the way you're going, because the medical bills are going to be far more expensive than just buying good food.
And it's going to kill you.
People that I'm way more expensive than that organic food you're about to buy. And also, if you and your husband are both working and your kids are sick, who's staying home from work? And now many jobs now, no work, no pay. So it's not like you get sick days anymore. Many sick days have been taken away. So if you work for yourself and you're an independent contractor, you're not going to get paid. I remember when my kids were sick, when the kids were little, my husband and I would do, odd finger to see who was going to stay home. It was much harder to stay home than go to work. I say, oh no, you stay home. I'm going to work, because I use that, as birth control, try being home with a sick kid for a week with diarrhea and a high fever, who's up all night. Oh yeah, it's okay. Not that much fun. And then if you layer on autism on that now, good luck. Every person should know what that feels like to do that every day with some of those kids.
You bringing the autism thing up reminds me of one of your podcasts that you did with Dr. Sabine Hazan. It was a recent podcast talking about mental health, children, and the microbiome.
Yep.
And her talking about doing fecal testing and really focusing on the bacteria in the gut. And once getting that organized and properly the way it should, seeing a lot of these symptoms of autism and the mood disorders and things like that being drastically reduced. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Sabine she's my colleague. She's amazing, and right here in California. And just so your listeners know what happened to Sabine, she was a mainstream gastroenterologist researcher, did tons of studies for the FDA, brilliant gal. And then she published data some years ago during COVID, which she showed that people who got the COVID vaccine, it literally obliterated the bifidobacteria that I mentioned previously out of their gut. Because she happened to have stool specimens before and after the COVID vaccine, and that's all that happened. And so when that happened to her, she literally got gaslit. Her X account disappeared, her Facebook went away. They just kind of X'd her out. Because when you touch on the raw nerve, believe me that those dentists out there are going to yank your tooth, because they don't want it. They want to suppress the information. But what they didn't realize that is Sabine is a lioness, and she came back roaring, and which I just love about her. And so what we talked about, and this is why probably when you remove glyphosate from the diet and you give kids nutrient-dense organic foods, you rebuild the microbiome, especially if you add fermented foods to their diet. Yogurts, kefir, some sourdough, sauerkraut, pickles. You can ferment just about any food that you want, fruits, veggies, everything can be fermented. That's likely restoring their gut, and then the gut-brain axis becomes restored. So that was the cornerstone of treatment for my kids with autism. The first thing I did was put them on an organic regenerative diet, whole foods. I often had to take out gluten and dairy because those are inflammatory foods. When kids are eating glyphosate also induces something called leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And that's when all the incompletely broken down food, proteins, molecules pass into the bloodstream. And your immune system, sitting on a one-cell layer thick gut layer, sees these foreign proteins as foreign invaders and mounts an immune response. And that is known as inflammation. When that's happening every single day, 3 times a day, it develops into chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation can land anywhere in your body and cause all kinds of havoc, grief beyond. Every single health disorder often has its roots in chronic inflammation. As we feed the organic whole foods diet, we give back those phytonutrients, the flavonoids, nutrient-dense foods, the minerals children need, eating the rainbow and all that stuff. You're giving them ferments. You're rebuilding the microbiome. You're reestablishing that gut brain microbiome access via the vagus nerve, which is part of something called the parasympathetic nervous system. And those little microbes are making the neurotransmitters GABA, calming. Your microbes are also responsible for producing something called serotonin. 80% of the serotonin is made in your gut, calming. It can rebalance the body's, which has the innate ability to heal itself, conversation through the parasympathetic nervous system. And so we try to re-regulate children via putting in alignment this axis. And that's what we were talking about. And the massive increase in not just neurodevelopmental disorders and ADHD, but OCD behaviors, anxiety, depression, food issues like anorexia, etc., all skyrocketing in kids, particularly in teens, but also all children. Many of these things can be reversed. I've seen just about every mental health, I hate that word, disorder be reversed. Now, it takes time. There's no magic bullet. It takes 1 to 3 years. But you start to see progress right away. As a matter of fact, there's a program here in my county run by a group called Turning Green, where she got one low-income school to go organic. And within 1 month, behavior was better, visits to the principal were down, and absenteeism rates plummeted. 1 month of eating these beautiful foods. And the kids became organic chefs, and they were ambassadors to the program. Food waste went down. It was amazing. And they started their own organic farm at the school. Every school should have an organic farm.
That's what
school.
Sister and I are working on right now with the kids at Lockhart ISD. We're very excited about it. And so we've been like, okay, what are these data points that we want to track so that we can show how this works? And everything that you just mentioned is excellent and on the list.
And my expectation.
Ask the teacher. You want to know what's happening to your kids? Ask their teachers. Because, years ago when my old kid was in kindergarten, first grade, and I used to be a volunteer in the room a lot because I was a little Budinsky parent, and I wanted to be helpful to the teacher because half the teacher's class had special needs, IEPs. I couldn't believe it. And that was 25 years ago. And I thought, oh my God, I can diagnose half these kids in this class. And the teachers needed so much help. It is like a disaster in public school, in all school, not just public school. Schools right now, what the teachers are managing, and they're managing these kids with the chronic behavioral disorders. And it's not that the parents are not being helpful. It's just that they don't know what to do. And that's why the teachers want all these kids medicated, because they can't manage the classrooms. I understand their frustration, but that's not the answer.
Well, and the parents are dealing with the same dietary issues that the children are. So it's not like they're clear-headed and calm and peaceful in their heart and clear in their mind. They are also poisoned and dealing with that issue themselves and the addiction of wanting the stuff. And so are they willing to do the hard thing? And which that's, man, I'm holding the vision of people getting it and understanding the value of it and being able, I'm hoping that with the amount of things being brought to light and people hearing and understanding, I'm just maybe this wave of energy. And I guess I'm supporting that and creating that for people to be able to do it, because I know it's hard.
It is very important. Hard. And we don't want to trivialize this. Oh, come on, change your diet. No, it is a big about face. It's difficult. And it has to be manifested every day. You have to be on the track. And the whole family has to buy in. Sometimes it's just mom or it's just dad. And forget about if there's a divorce situation. The most common scenario is mom is on board, dad's not. So the kid eats well 3.5 days a week, and the other 3.5 days a week it's Taco Bell. And I don't keep meaning to pick on Taco Bell. It's fast food. It's all of them. Fast food and like junk cereal. So I've seen every permutation of problem. So it's like families unite, do this together. It's hard. And you got to start with the pantry. So now I do a lot of Zoom calls and I ask people for photos of the pantry. I'm shocked. It's like, whoa, people say I'm organic. I'm like, no, you're not. That's not organic. Buying organic dairy, right on, okay. But you can't have all that junk food and processed food in the pantry. Chips and cookies and the whole deal and all the frozen garbage. So that's why I say, let's start with your pantry. And again, we sort of meet people where they're at. And we're not asking for perfection. Start the journey where if all you can do is one thing, do the one thing. If you're the gal or the dad who can do 20 things, do 20. But start somewhere. And the whole family has to be told what's happening. You can't signal out one kid. So if just one kid is having gut issues and the other kids are fine, I've seen that too. It's just one kid out of the 5 who's having problems. Why that is, I don't know. But the whole family has to change because the other 4 are going to be affected also. Or the other kids have issues the parents aren't even aware of, because sometimes there are sneaky things going on like constipation or reflux, or the teens are upstairs not sleeping because the parents don't know, that they're not even privy to. And once kids are potty trained, they often don't tell the parents what's going on in the potty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ask for poopy pictures all the time.
Yeah, I hope somebody doesn't get a hold to your phone, think they're going to see something interesting.
They'll see something interesting.
Okay, so for a family that's wanting to do this and say, the kid's on mood altering medication, something to treat the ADD or whatever. So how does this work? Are we changing the diet and then we start titrating off of these medications? Like, what advice do you have for parents that are like, okay, I want to try this, but how do I do that and manage the medicine and the food?
So what I never pull kids off their meds. I don't do it. I allow the parent who's working with their therapist, psychiatrist, neurologist, whatever they're doing, to do that. And the reason why is because some meds require a slow, tapered withdrawal, because the kids are also addicted to those meds, particularly the antidepressants, the SSRIs, and also the ADHD drugs. You stop in and the kids like this in school. So it has to be in concert. And I ask the other providers to do it with us. The first thing I do is ask the parents of whether, if they can't afford to just dump their pantry, if they can start replacing items that are organic, regenerative. And even if they have SNAP or food stamps, a lot of farmers markets accept SNAP or food stamps, and they'll give you double back. Here in California, they'll give you double. So if you have SNAP, which is food stamps in California, double back at the farmers market. And here in California, we have a farmers market all year round in my area. So find your farmers markets, find your local farmers. I ask for organic. If the farmer is not certified, the little green and white label, which is very expensive, but they use organic practice and you know your farmer, I say go for it. A lot of the farmers I buy from the market saying, I'm not certified, but I don't use chemicals. I use regenerative techniques. And I ask them what they do. I want to hear about no-till farming. I want to hear about crop rotation. I want to hear about soil restoration and how they love their soil. I want to hear those words. And if the farmers are talking that, right on, you got my business. And I will pay the extra $1, $3, $5. Now, I am lucky I can afford to do that. Some families can't. So then what I say is, if you can find the farmers market, go at the end of the day, because the farmers will also often release the bags at a lower price and the imperfects. There's nothing wrong with the fruit and the veggies that don't look good. They just don't look good. They still are nutrient dense. So buy the imperfect foods. They'll often give you a discount, okay, if you buy the imperfect. And I buy like the bunch. So we talk about that. And I say, make one change at a time if that's all you can do. If your kids are old enough, have a conversation. If they're 2 or 3, you just do it. Now, if they are having neurodevelopmental challenges, which are the most common and difficult to manage, I ask the parents to take them off gluten and dairy. I do. I say, go gluten and dairy free. If you can't do both, go with one. And I'll often start with gluten. And gluten is such an inflammatory substance, not because it is genetically modified, which they're trying to do every single day, is create GMO wheat, but it has such a high amount of lectin in it, as well. It's been hybridized to be a shorter, bushier wheat that it's harder to digest versus European wheat, which people say they can often eat. And not to mention that the wheat crop is heavily sprayed with glyphosate-based herbicides because they use it as a desiccant. It's an off-label use of glyphosate, Roundup, at harvest to dry down the crop so it's easier to harvest. So wheat is just filled with pesticides. So is it the wheat? Is it the glyphosate? Is it both? Likely. Take them off wheat. Pull them off dairy too while you're at it. People say, where is he getting his calcium? Oh my God. I say, well, good question. I say, try broccoli, try almonds, almond butter. Almonds are high in calcium too. And then cruciferous veggies are also high in calcium. But we want to do this initially to get them started. So now they're on organic regenerative diet. We've taken them off gluten and dairy. And so they should start to see improvements. And now I say, start adding some nutrients back. And sometimes the kids will need a multivitamin to boost their nutrient levels. So that I'll do for sure is I'll add a multivitamin and I'll add in a probiotic. Why probiotic? I prefer fermented foods, but try to get kids to eat sauerkraut sometimes, or kefir if they're off dairy, or I'll use fermented coconut milk. I make it myself. It's delicious, easy to make. Fermented coconut milk is so easy. And until you get them to do that, because sometimes when kids are zinc deficient and or on the autism spectrum, they're very picky in their taste. So try to get the kids to eat certain foods can be challenging. It can be really hard. It takes like 10 tries to get a food into a kid, at least, to get them to try a new food. So, and if you have 3 kids and you're trying new foods, and mom's going to just lose her mind. So then we do that. Now what I've done is I've started to heal the leaky gut, restore the dysbiosis, which is the abnormal microbiome, restore nutrients. And then what I start doing is working on getting the heavy metals out. And the way I remove heavy metals is, of course, dietary change. I do water filtration, very mindful about what chemicals and personal care products we put on the kids, and also putting cilantro and other gentle binders in their food. Cilantro, clean chlorella, apple pectin. These are all natural foods that will help clean out some of those heavy metals. You could also use detox baths. So now we start mobilizing the metals out. This time that you may find that your little Susie or may not be needing those ADHD meds. And then you can start to wean them off. Or they're antidepressant, you can start to wean them off with your psychiatrist or psychologist. And I suggest you do it in conjunction with someone so your kid doesn't bottom out. I don't bottom out children. I kind of gently transition them. So I don't believe that kids need to I don't like it. So we do that. And I'm a big fan of the detox bath because we have poisoned our children through food, air, water, injectables, and electromagnetic frequencies. Oh, hardwire your house. We can detox bath them. You can put them in 1 to 2 a week in a bath, hot water, with Epsom salt, sea salt. I know the microplastic issue. I just do the Celtic sea salt or real salt. I put in there a little bit of baking soda, and I put in a little bit of boron. And I soak the kid in the bath 15, 20 minutes. As the water cools, you have to put more hot water in or get them out because they will reabsorb anything they've excreted. And then have them shower it off. And you do that once a week because I think we need ongoing detoxification from this toxic planet we're living in. And last but not least, just a word on water filters, because I know that's a big subject and Environmental Working Group has good water filters to buy. I say buy the best water filter you can afford for your family. If it's a carbon pitcher, fine. Under the sink, fine. Whole house system, because that's what you can afford, fine. Get this system you can afford. Berkey water countertop, fine. There are lots of good systems depending on your home, your family, your budget. Do what you can afford, because it's not just Flint, Michigan that has problem with its tap water. I don't trust the tap water, and many counties across the country have fluoride. Got to get the fluoride out. My county's fluoridated. I won't drink that fluoride water. Get it out. So that's kind of an overview where parents can begin.
And the one thing I would love to add to that is that farm kids tend to be healthier. So also getting them outside, getting their hands in the dirt, being barefoot, just getting dirty with nature is kind of helpful too, I think.
Exactly. Wrestling around the dog.
Joanna, Crystal, thank you for bringing that up, because I can't believe I didn't mention that, but you are spot on, ladies. Get them outside, running around on the beach, on the land, on the farm, barefoot, get their hands dirty, have them pull the carrot out of the ground, and they will get regrounded in nature. We don't let our kids out enough. And even if you just have a park near your house, if you're not on a farm, or you can get to a farm, or you can get to the beach, or you can get to wherever you can get to, go there. And it doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to be sophisticated. It can be something very simple. Hug a tree, Yes, we are tree huggers here where I live. So hug a tree.
Me too.
Now, and what advice do you have in the cooking and cookware department? We know that you are involved in a group in California where you live, that you've kind of advanced your cooking skills and learned some things. What can you share with us around that?
Very excited to hear this.
Yeah, well, this had happened by accident a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. A colleague of mine is an environmental physician, and she said, Michelle, you have to buy Salad Master. It's been around since, I think, 1943, I think. And I said, I don't need no cookware. I have Le Creuset. I have all class. She goes, no, toxic metals from the cookware. Your cookware is not safe. And I was very hesitant and really didn't want to invest in new cookware. And I thought, are you kidding? Expensive cookware. So I had a demo and I tested my own cookware. And I have every piece of cookware. I have a stainless steel all-clad. I have Le Creuset, the ceramic pots. I had a crock pot. And of course, I have the iron frying pan, which is not all iron. Turns out there are other things. And I did this test cooking my cookware in a little bit of baking soda and water and the Salad Master. And lo and behold, my cookware tasted horrible as it leached the metals. It leaches the metals, every single piece of cookware except Salad Master, which is made from a titanium steel blend, sort of like what you'd get in a knee replacement or a hip replacement. So I bought the cookware. It cooks at low heat. So it's designed that once it's boiling, you turn it down and it retains the nutrients. It cooks below 190. It cooks evenly and fast. And I was so shocked how much better my food tasted. And in my area, the dealer who runs our area Salad Master, gives cooking classes. And I was going to one a month. I've done 30. I've learned how to cook. And I wasn't bad before. I've cooked for my kids. I can make just about anything now. And I had to take lessons. And the woman who runs our dealership, her name is Isis Israel. She's a lovely gal from Utah, absolutely divine. She's a chef and a nutritionist. And she healed herself using nutrition from cancer 20 some odd years ago, from lymphoma herself. She walks the walk, talks the talk. And so I go to the classes. So then what happened was, as if I'm not busy enough, I became an associate with Salad Masters. And I learned how to be a sous chef for them and do cooking demos. I didn't really have time to be doing this. But what I'm going to do for them is I'm going to test their clients' toxic metal loads before and after the cookware. And I want to show them from an educational perspective, the changing of the cookware matters, and your cookware matters, because you're buying all this organic, beautiful food, and then you're cooking it, hopefully not in Farberware, which is all aluminum, and your food becomes contaminated. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so it's expensive. I invested. It's the best investment I ever made. When you give a cooking show, you get free pieces. So I've given cooking demos at my house here. I've done several. And I have now a full set of cookware. And I have things going all the time. I just love this stuff. And it's about lowering the toxic load. If you buy organic food and then you put them in aluminum cookware, you're going to contaminate your food. And so Isis was on my podcast. People can just watch it. At the end of that podcast, I think it's episode 31, Tamara Rubin was 32. She's the Lead Safe Mama. It was 31. And at the end of that podcast, we did a segment on how to make baby food. So parents don't need to buy that little jar of food that's wicked expensive and can make a sweet potato at home or apple. Applesauce is so easy. Sweet potatoes for baby, so easy.
I love that. My grandmother, my mom's mom, bought a set of Salad Master pots and pans in 50s, maybe. So anyway, I have several of those pieces and I love them. And so I knew I wanted to hear this. I love it.
I love this stuff. And people think I've lost my mind or I'm pushing sales. I'm like, no, I believe in it because I test kids for toxicity on their toxic metals. They're toxic. Aluminum, cadmium, arsenic, off the charts. I've seen it. And mainstream medicine's not testing for it. And when you change their food and the methods that you cook it, it drops. These toxic metals, especially if kids are nutrient deficient, are even more toxic. There is no safe level of lead. Lead is a neurotoxin, toxic to the brain. Aluminum is a toxic to the brain. Mercury is even more toxic than lead. And when I did that infant formula study last year, I found 40 of 40 infant formulas were positive for aluminum and lead. All 40.
You said 40 of 40? Wow.
All
Gosh.
40. And we're poisoning our children with toxic metals. And I say toxic because aluminum is not heavy by weight. It's a weight thing. So I say not heavy metals. They're heavy metals, but aluminum is not heavy. It's just toxic. They're toxic. The aluminum was off the charts in baby formula. Goat, organic, foreign, like European formula. Everyone thinks it's better. Some not so much. Australian formula is not better. Moms need to breastfeed. There's no doubt. I mean, we can get into that, but that's a whole nother show. But it matters because you don't want to put that beautiful, clean food you just raised, and raising your own food takes some work. Oh yeah, I try it. I am bowing before people who raise their own food. I have chickens. I try to grow my own food. Oh my gosh, it's a lot of work. Yes. Then you're going to put it in toxic cookware. Doesn't make sense. And that salad master is guaranteed for life. You pass it on to your kids, teach them how to use it.
So now let's talk about GMOscience.org. It is solution-based guidance. You are the CEO and co-founder. Tell us a little bit about what the GMO Science platform offers people.
So that was designed, as I mentioned, to label GMOs when they were introduced in 2014. That's why we're started, to counter the narrative that GMOs are safe. Because every time people Google, are GMOs safe? Yes, yes, yes. And those are all industry talking points. So we had to create a science-based platform to show that that wasn't true. And it was myself, another fabulous physician, and a lawyer, Dr. Ash and Debbie Friedman. Those two gals dropped off, as people do. Things change. And I was not the CEO at the time. I couldn't see this organization just fail or just end because we put our blood, sweat, and tears into it. So I stepped up as CEO reluctantly. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to run a website. What do I know about running a website? I've been doing it for about 5 years now. It's going strong. But what I decided to do was to take everything I was doing, all my parenting info, the book info, the podcast info, and just marry it on GMO Science. It all lives there, all the parent stuff. I have vaccine injury stuff. I have parent handouts on everything. I have videos, the New MD podcast. I put it all in one place. That's where it lives. And my goal is to release into the universe anything I may have gleaned in my years of practice, 43 now, to people, to parents, because I don't think the present system works. Now, while we try to fix it, we need a paradigm switch, a parallel system of integrative health. So again, GMO Science is just a collaboration, a conglomeration of literally my life's work, and it's just all up there. I try to focus on GMOs, genetic engineering, why they're problematic. I just wrote a piece yesterday about people think that genetic engineering is fine in health, as a medical tool. Well, they have now shown that in 2 different genetic diseases that they've used genetic engineering, children have died. I published a piece yesterday on Substack as well as on GMO Science, and I do have a Substack. So that's what it's there for. I'm a 501c3. I work on the kindness and love of people, support my work, and I do have some angel donors that support what I do. And I'm filled with gratitude and graciousness to my friend and my funder, Ruth Westreich, and the Westreich Foundation. She's beautiful. And so that's what I do there. And this new book, the reason why it's taking so long is that I wrote this book 2 years ago, but the nutritionist dropped off because she was concerned about some of the things I was saying. And then I had to rewrite the nutrition section, true story. And then I had a publisher, and they wanted certain edits, and I wasn't willing to do. So I returned their advance and decided to self-publish. So that took a little time. And
Way
so that,
go.
Yes.
Yep, it's like, no, I cannot compromise my values. I'll just self-publish it. It's fine. You don't write a book to make money. And what we do, you do it to get the word out. And then I've got the podcast as well. And one of the things I'm really proud of is I paired up with an online university. It's called South Seas University. And starting September 21st, I'm teaching a 4-week course once a week on Sundays for parents, educators, people who love children. I have a couple of practitioners who signed up, just focused on the principles of homeopathy and nutrition, I'm going through homeopathy. I'm going how to make swaps, and I'm ending on the microbiome. So that will be a loaded course, and that's a tax deduction for GMO Science, and I share that with the educational programs at this university. So I've got lots of things that I'm working on, all with the hope of education and working with families. I don't do it so much one-on-one anymore as I used to, and now I try to speak to a global community.
Well, Dr. Dog, we appreciate what you do and who you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much. Crystal, thank you, Soil Sisters. Love what you're up to. I love your regenerative messages, teaching what you teach into your communities, and however I may serve you, please let me know.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. Absolutely.
And a big shout out and thank you to Howard Vlieger for connecting us.
Howard, we love you, Howard. Thank you
so much. Yes.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.